Commander Zethka stood on the bridge of his ship and watched his world die. Through the large windows, he could see the dark shapes. Moving across the surface of Valara Prime, the Devourers had been there for 3 days now. Soon, there would be nothing left. His hands shook as he gripped the metal rail. 3 worlds were already gone. 3 beautiful planets, where billions of his people had lived and worked and loved. Now they were just empty rocks floating in space. The Devourers had eaten everything. Every tree, every animal, every person. Even the grass was gone. "Sir," came a voice behind him. Zethka turned to see his communications officer, a young female, named Kiranel. Her blue skin was pale with fear. "The last transport ships have left the surface. We got most of the children out. Most of the children, not all." Zethka closed his eyes and tried not to think about the ones they could not save. The Devourers moved so fast. Too fast. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked. 47, sir, including the civilian transports." 47 ships. That was all that remained of the mighty Valerian fleet. They had started with over 300 ships just 2 months ago. The Devourers had destroyed the rest. His people were good at many things. They could build beautiful cities, and write lovely music, and solve hard problems with science. But they were not good at war. They never had to be good at war, until now. "Sir," Kiranel said again, "what are your orders?" Zethka looked out at the dying world below. What orders could he give? They had tried everything. Their weapons barely hurt the Devourers. Their shields could not stop them. Running away only delayed the end. The Devourers would follow them wherever they went. They always did. He walked to his command chair and sat down. The weight of failure pressed down on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. He was supposed to protect his people. He was supposed to find a way to win, but there was no way to win against the Devourers. No one had ever beaten them. In all the stories passed down through the ages, the Devourers always won. They always consumed everything. "Sir." Kiranel was waiting for an answer. "Send a message to all ships," Zethka said slowly. "We retreat to the outer system. Full speed." "Yes, sir." As the fleet moved away from Valara Prime, Zethka watched the planet shrink in the distance. By tomorrow, it would look just like the other dead worlds, gray and lifeless. Another meal for the endless hunger of the Devourers, but something inside him refused to give up. Not yet. There had to be something they could do. Someone they could ask for help. The galaxy was big. Surely there was someone out there who could help them. "Kiranel," he said, "open a channel on all frequencies. All of them." The young officer looked confused. "Sir, all frequencies. That would reach every system in known space. It might even go beyond that." "Good, do it. But sir, some of those signals will reach species we have never met. We do not know if they are friendly." Zethka almost laughed. Friendly? What did it matter now? The Devourers were not friendly. They were the most unfriendly thing in the universe. Anyone else had to be better. "Open the channel," he said again. Kiranel pressed the buttons on her console. A soft beep told them the channel was open. Every communications system in the fleet was now broadcasting on every frequency they knew. The message would travel faster than light, reaching distant stars in days or weeks. Zech-Ka cleared his throat and began to speak. "This is Commander Zeth-Ka of the Valerian Confederation. We are dying. Our worlds are being destroyed by an enemy. We cannot fight. They call themselves the Devourers. They eat everything, every plant, every animal, every person. They leave nothing behind but empty rock." He paused and looked out at his small fleet. 47 ships carrying the last of his people. We have tried to fight them. We have tried to run from them. Nothing works. They are too strong and too fast. They never stop eating, never stop growing, never stop hunting us. His voice began to shake. He was asking for help from strangers. from aliens he had never met and might never meet. It was a desperate thing to do, but desperation was all he had left. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We do not ask for much, just a way to fight back, just a chance to save our children. We will share everything we know, our science, our culture, our friendship. All we ask is for someone to help us survive. He looked around the bridge. His officers were watching him with sad eyes. They all knew this was probably useless, but they also knew it was their only hope. The Devourers have consumed 3 of our 7 worlds. 4 worlds remain, but not for long. They will come for those worlds next, and after they finish with us, they will look for new prey. They will find other races to hunt and eat. This message might be the last warning the galaxy receives. Zethka stood up from his chair. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, maybe someone was listening. Maybe someone cared. Maybe someone could help. Please, he said into the microphone. If you have weapons, we do not have. If you know tactics, we do not know. If you have any way to fight these creatures, please come. Please help us. We are running out of time. He nodded to Kiranel, who closed the channel. The message was sent. Now all they could do was wait and hope. Far away, on a small blue planet, orbiting a yellow star, Dr. Lisa Carter was working the night shift at the Deep Space Communications Array. She was drinking her 4th cup of coffee and trying to stay awake when her computer started beeping. The signal was strong, very strong, and it was coming from outside known space. Lisa sat up straight and began to work. She had been listening to space for 10 years, but she had never heard anything like this. The signal was clearly artificial, clearly from an intelligent source, and it was asking for help. 20 minutes later, she was on the phone with her supervisor. 30 minutes after that, she was talking to people at Space Command. By morning, the message had reached the highest levels of human government. The aliens thought they were calling for help from fellow peaceful races. They had no idea they had just contacted the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, and the humans were already preparing to answer their call. Captain Ben Taylor stood in the briefing room of the UES Defender and looked at the faces around the table. Admiral Jake Morrison had sent his best people for this mission: Marines, scientists, doctors, and engineers. All of them ready to travel farther from Earth than any human had ever gone before. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Dr. Amy Foster, the mission's lead scientist. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. These aliens are being eaten by some kind of space monster. That's what the message said, Lisa Carter replied. She had flown up from Earth just for this meeting. The translation software is still working on the details, but the basic meaning is clear. They're fighting something called Devourers that consume entire planets. Colonel Rita Stone, the Marine commander, leaned forward in her chair. How do we know this isn't some kind of trap? Maybe these aliens are the bad guys, and they're trying to trick us. We don't know, Admiral Morrison admitted. But the signal came from 7 different locations. All of them showed signs of massive destruction. Whatever is happening out there, it's real. Taylor studied the star charts on the table. The alien signals had come from a region of space about 50 light-years away. It would take them 2 weeks to get there, even with their fastest ships. What's our mission exactly? Are we going to fight, or just observe? Both, Morrison said. First, we observe. We figure out what we're dealing with. Then we decide if we can help. The President has made it clear that we don't start any wars, but we don't run away from people who need help either. Dr. Foster pulled up images on her tablet. I've been studying the data from their message. These Valerians seem to be a peaceful species. Their technology is different from ours, but not necessarily better or worse. What worries me is that they sound completely helpless against these Devourers. Maybe they've never had to fight before, Colonel Stone suggested. Some species might be naturally peaceful. The humans around the table exchanged glances. The idea of a truly peaceful species was hard for them to understand. Earth's history was full of war and conflict. Every human culture had warriors and weapons. Even their games and sports were based on competition and fighting. "How long before we arrive?" Taylor asked. 14 days, Morrison replied. "The fleet is already being prepared. 5 ships total. The Defender will lead, with the cruisers Boston and Denver providing support. The science vessel Discovery will handle research, and the transport ship Liberty will carry supplies and medical equipment." Lisa Carter spoke up again. "Sir, what if we get there and find out the aliens are already dead? The last message was sent 3 days ago. A lot can happen in 3 days." Morrison's face was grim. "Then we learn what we can and make sure the same thing doesn't happen to anyone else." 2 weeks later, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Valerian system. What they found shocked them into silence. The system had once held 7 planets. Now only 4 remained intact. The other 3 were just chunks of dead rock floating in space. And around those dead worlds, strange organic shapes moved through. The vacuum like living ships. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark from his position at the sensor station. "What are those things?" Dr. Foster studied the readings on her screen. "They're alive. Definitely alive. But they're huge. Some of them are bigger than our largest ships." Taylor opened a communication channel to the other ships in the fleet. "All vessels maintain distance and continue scanning. Do not engage unless fired upon." On the main screen, they could see the alien fleet. 47 ships of strange design, hiding behind the 4th planet. They looked small and fragile compared to the massive organic forms that filled the system. "Captain," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. It's the same language as the distress signal. Put it through the translation system." A few seconds later, a new voice filled the bridge. It sounded tired and afraid. "Unknown ships, please, identify yourselves. This system is dangerous. The Devourers are here." Taylor picked up the microphone. "This is Captain Ben Taylor of the United Earth Ship Defender. We received your distress call. We're here to help." There was a long pause. Then the alien voice came back, full of surprise. You came. You actually came. But you are so far away. How did you travel so fast? We'll explain later. Right now, we need to understand what we're dealing with. Can you send a representative to meet with us?" Another pause. Yes, of course. Commander Zethka will come to your ship. But please, be careful. The Devourers have ships in this system. They could attack at any time." An hour later, Commander Zethka stepped aboard the Defender. He was tall and thin, with blue skin and large eyes. He walked carefully, as if he was afraid of breaking something. When he saw the humans waiting for him, his eyes grew even larger. "You are different than I expected," he said through the translation device. Captain Taylor stepped forward and extended his hand. "Welcome aboard our ship, Commander. This is our way of greeting friends." Zethka looked at the offered hand with confusion. Dr. Foster quickly explained. "It's called a handshake, a sign of respect and friendship." The alien commander carefully took Taylor's hand. His skin was cool and smooth. "Your people are very solid," he said, "and your ship is built like a fortress." "Most of our ships are built for combat," Taylor explained. "We'll show you around later. Right now, we need to understand these Devourers. Can you tell us about them?" Zethka's face became sad. "They appeared 2 months ago. We do not know where they came from. They attacked our outer colonies first. We tried to negotiate with them, but they do not communicate. They only consume." Dr. Foster leaned forward. "Consume? You mean they eat things?" "Everything," Zethka said. "Plants, animals, People, buildings, even the soil. They break everything down and absorb it. Then they grow larger and reproduce. Within days, one devourer becomes 10. Within weeks, 10 become 100. Colonel Stone had been quiet during the conversation, but now she spoke up. What kind of weapons do you have? How have you been fighting them? Zethka looked confused by the question. Fighting. We have some defensive systems on our ships. Energy barriers and particle beams. But they are not very effective. The devourers adapt quickly to any weapon we use. What about ground forces? Stone-pressed, soldiers, infantry weapons. The alien commander's confusion grew deeper. Ground forces. I do not understand. Why would we fight on the ground? The humans exchanged glances. Colonel Stone tried again. When the devourers land on your planets, how do your people resist? How do they defend their cities? They do not resist, Zethka said slowly. Our people are not trained for violence. We evacuate the cities and hope our ships can rescue everyone in time. The bridge fell silent. The humans were beginning to understand just how different these aliens were from them. The Valerians had never learned to fight. They had never needed to. Commander, Taylor said carefully, has your species ever fought a war? Ever had soldiers or armies? Zethka shook his head. War is an old concept from our ancient past. We gave up violence thousands of years ago when we learned to solve problems with words and wisdom. All the species in our confederation are the same. We believe violence only creates more violence. Dr. Foster whispered to Taylor, they're completely defenseless. They don't even understand the concept of military resistance. Taylor nodded grimly. These aliens had called for help, but they had no idea what kind of help they needed. They were like sheep, asking for protection from wolves, not knowing they had just contacted a pack of hunting dogs. Lieutenant Commander Clark suddenly spoke up from his station. Captain, I'm detecting movement from the Devourer ships. 3 of the large ones are heading toward the outer planet. Taylor turned to Zethka. Commander, which planet are they approaching? Valara Minor, the alien said, his voice filled with fear. There are still people there. Millions of people. Taylor made his decision quickly. Colonel Stone, prepare your Marines. Dr. Foster, I want continuous scans of those Devourer ships. Commander Clark, take us to intercept all ships, battle stations. As the Defender moved toward the threatened planet, Zethka watched the humans work with growing amazement. They moved with purpose and confidence. They seemed almost eager for the coming fight, for the first time since the Devourers arrived. The alien commander felt something he had almost forgotten, hope. Dr. Amy Foster sat across from Commander Zethka in the ship's science lab. Between them on the table was a holographic display showing planet Earth. The alien commander stared at the image with what Foster could only describe as horror. Your gravity is how strong? Zethka asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Standard Earth gravity is about 9.8 meters per second squared, Foster replied. What's the gravity on your homeworld? 6.2, Zethka said. How do you even move under such crushing force? Foster smiled. We're used to it. We evolved there. Actually, this ship's artificial gravity is set to Earth normal. You've been walking around in our gravity for the past 2 days. Zethka looked down at his feet as if seeing them for the first time. No wonder I feel so heavy. How do you survive? It makes us strong, Foster explained. Strong bones, strong muscles, strong hearts. We have to be strong just to live on our world. She changed the display to show Earth's weather patterns. This is a typical storm system on Earth. Wind speeds can reach over 300 kilometers per hour. That would destroy most buildings on Valara Prime, Zethka said. We build our structures to withstand it, Foster said. We have to. And this is just regular weather. We also have hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, and ice storms that can freeze a person solid in minutes. The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. Your world is trying to kill you every day, Foster agreed. But that's not the worst part. She changed the display again. Now it showed various earth animals. A lion stalking through tall grass, a grizzly bear standing on its hind legs, a great white shark cutting through dark water. These are some of our predators, Foster explained. This one weighs 200 kilograms and can run 80 kilometers per hour. This one is 3 meters tall and can break bones with its bare hands. This one has teeth like knives and can smell blood from kilometers away. Zethka leaned back in his chair. And these creatures live on the same world as your people. They used to hunt us, Foster said. For millions of years, we were prey. We had to learn to fight back or we would have gone extinct. How did you survive? Foster smiled grimly. We became better predators than they were. The display changed to show early humans. Our ancestors learned to work together. They made weapons and traps. They developed strategies and tactics. Most importantly, they never gave up. No matter how dangerous the predator, no matter how hopeless the situation, humans always found a way to fight back. But surely you are peaceful now, Zethka asked. Surely you have evolved beyond violence like we have. Foster was quiet for a moment. How could she explain Earth's history to someone who had never known war? Commander, in the past century alone, humans have fought in dozens of major wars. Millions of people have died in combat. We've built weapons that could destroy our entire planet. That is horrible, Zethka whispered. Yes, Foster agreed, but it also means we know how to fight. We understand warfare in ways your people never needed to. When you called for help, you didn't just contact another peaceful species. You contacted apex predators. On the bridge, Captain Taylor was meeting with his senior officers. The past 2 days of observing the Devourers had taught them a lot. None of it was good news. They're not just animals, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark reported. They show signs of intelligence. They coordinate their attacks, and they learn from their mistakes. Colonel Stone nodded. My Marines observed 3 separate feeding events on Valara Minor. The Devourers approach in waves. First come the scouts, small ones about the size of a car. They test the defenses and look for weaknesses. Then come the workers, continued Dr. Foster, who had joined the meeting. Medium-sized ones that start the actual consumption process. They break down organic matter and feed it to the larger forms. And finally, the warriors, Stone finished. Those are the big ones we saw in space. They protect the workers and fight off any resistance. Taylor studied the tactical display. So they're not just mindless eating machines. They have a strategy. A very effective strategy, Clark added. Against the Valerians anyway. The aliens try to evacuate their people, but they never fight back. The Devourers have learned that they can feed without any real opposition. That's about to change, Stone said grimly. Colonel, I want you to select a team for a ground mission, Taylor ordered. We need live samples and detailed intelligence. Can your Marines handle that? Stone grinned. Sir, my Marines have been itching for a fight since we got here. A reconnaissance mission against alien monsters. That's like Christmas morning for them. Make sure they understand the risks, Taylor warned. These things have destroyed 3 entire worlds. With respect, sir, Stone replied. My Marines have trained for every kind of combat Earth can imagine. Urban warfare, jungle fighting, desert operations, underwater missions, even zero-gravity combat. I think we can handle some oversized bugs. Later that evening, Staff Sergeant Tony Martinez was briefing his squad in the Marine Armory. 12 men and women sat around him, checking their weapons and equipment. They had volunteered for what many would consider a suicide mission, but they all looked calm and ready. The target is a small devourer colony on the northern continent of Valara Minor, Martinez explained. Our job is to capture at least one live specimen and gather as much intelligence as possible. Corporal Lisa Baker raised her hand. Sergeant, what kind of opposition are we expecting? Unknown, Martinez admitted. The aliens don't have much information about Devourer ground tactics. They've never actually fought them on the surface. Private Danny Cooper shook his head. No ground. Resistance at all? What kind of species doesn't even try to defend their homes? The kind that never had to, Martinez replied. Remember, these people evolved on easy worlds. No dangerous predators, no natural disasters, no resource conflicts. They never learned to fight because they never needed to. Must be nice, muttered Private Kelly Adams. Focus, Marines, Martinez said. Just because the aliens can't fight these things doesn't mean we can't. We have advantages the Devourers have never seen before. He pulled up tactical displays showing Earth military history. For the past 10,000 years, humans have been perfecting the art of war. We've fought in every environment, against every kind of enemy. We've developed weapons, tactics, and strategies that have never been tested against alien life forms. What's our primary advantage, Sergeant? Asked Corporal Mike Torres. Experience, Martinez replied. Every human culture has warrior traditions. Every human child grows up hearing stories about heroes who fought impossible odds and won. We understand concepts like sacrifice, courage, and tactical thinking because we've been using them to survive for millions of years. Private Cooper leaned forward. What about our equipment? How do we know our weapons will work against these things? Our weapons were designed to kill Earth predators, Martinez explained. Things like bears, tigers, and sharks. Creatures that evolved to be perfect killing machines. If our weapons can stop a charging rhino or a great white shark, they should work fine against alien monsters. The Marines nodded. They had all seen what human weapons could do. They had trained with guns that could punch through steel and explosives that could level buildings. The Devourers might be alien, but they were still made of biological matter. Remember, Martinez continued, we're not just representing Earth on this mission. We're representing every human who ever stood up to a predator. Every ancestor who fought off a wolf pack or faced down a charging mammoth. Every soldier who held the line when defeat seemed certain. He looked around at his squad. The aliens think violence is outdated. They think the galaxy has evolved beyond warfare. They're about to learn why humans are still here, when smarter, more peaceful species have gone extinct. Private Adams smiled grimly. Because when something tries to eat us, we eat it back. Exactly, Martinez said. Now gear up, Marines. Time to show these Devourers what happens when they mess with a Deathworld species. As the Marines prepared their equipment, Commander Zethka watched from the observation deck. He still couldn't understand these strange aliens who had come to help his people. They seemed to enjoy the prospect of danger. They talked about violence, the way his people talked about art or music. Dr. Foster joined him at the window. You look troubled, Commander. Your people frighten me, Zethka admitted. I am grateful for your help, but I wonder what we have unleashed by calling you here. Foster was quiet for a moment. Commander, has it occurred to you that the galaxy might need to be frightened sometimes? That maybe there are threats out there that can only be stopped by people who know how to fight? But violence leads to more violence, Zethka protested. That is why we abandoned warfare. That is why all civilized species reject it. On Earth, we have a saying, Foster replied. Si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. Sometimes the only way to protect peaceful people is to have dangerous people ready to fight for them. She pointed toward the Marine Armory. Those men and women down there aren't monsters, Commander. They're protectors. They choose to face danger, so that others don't have to. They're willing to die for people they've never met, on worlds they've never seen. Zethka watched the Marines preparing for their mission, And if they succeed, if they drive away the Devourers, what then? Foster smiled sadly. Then the galaxy will know that Earth exists. Staff Sergeant Tony Martinez crouched behind a broken wall and watched the Devourers feed. Through his rifle scope, he could see dozens of the creatures moving through what had once been a Valerian city. The smallest ones, about the size of dogs, scurried between buildings and collected organic debris. Medium-sized ones, as large as trucks, broke down structures and processed the materials. And in the center of it all, a massive warrior form stood guard like a living tank. "Jesus," whispered Corporal Lisa Baker beside him. "Look at the size of that thing." The warrior form was at least 20 meters long, with thick armor plating and multiple limbs that ended in sharp claws. As they watched, it picked up a fallen tree and swallowed it whole. Within seconds, the organic matter was processed, and the creature grew slightly larger. "Target acquired," Martinez said into his radio. "Big, ugly, center of the feeding zone. Range 800 meters. "Copy that, Sergeant," came Captain Taylor's voice from orbit. "You have permission to engage when ready." Martinez smiled grimly. "Marines, this is what we trained for. Remember, we want one alive for study. Kill the big one and capture one of the medium-sized workers." The attack began with precision that would have impressed generals throughout human history. Private Danny Cooper fired the first shot, a high-powered rifle round that punched through the warrior form's armor plating. The creature roared and spun toward the source of the attack, only to be hit by 2 more shots from different directions. The Devourers had never faced coordinated resistance before. For millions of years, they had fed on peaceful species that either fled or died quickly. They had no experience with predators that fought back using tactics and teamwork. "Grenades, now!" Martinez shouted. 4 explosions rocked the feeding zone. The smaller Devourers were killed instantly, while the medium-sized ones were stunned and disoriented. The warrior form, wounded but still dangerous, charged toward the Marines' position. "Fall back to position 2, Martinez ordered. "Baker, Torres, suppress fire on the big one. Everyone else, capture protocol on the wounded worker." The Marines moved like a machine. Years of training on Earth's most dangerous terrains had prepared them for this moment. They used every trick their species had learned in 10,000 years of warfare. Flanking maneuvers, suppression fire, tactical retreats, and coordinated attacks. Private Kelly Adams launched a net made of high-strength polymer over one of the wounded workers. The creature thrashed and tried to break free, but human engineering held firm. Within minutes, they had their live specimen. The warrior form proved harder to kill. It survived 3 direct hits from anti-tank weapons and kept fighting even after losing 2 limbs. But it made one critical mistake. It focused all its attention on the Marines directly in front of it, forgetting to watch for threats from other directions. Corporal Mike Torres flanked the creature and put a shaped charge directly against its head. The explosion finally brought the monster down. "Target neutralized," Martinez reported. "Specimen captured. All Marines accounted for." "Outstanding work," Sergeant Taylor replied. "Return to base for debriefing." But the real battle was just beginning 3 days later. Dr. Amy Foster stood in the ship's laboratory and watched their captured devourer through reinforced glass. The creature was about the size of a small car, with multiple limbs and a mouth full of grinding teeth. It had been trying to break out of its containment for the past 72 hours. "What have you learned?" Captain Taylor asked. "They're more sophisticated than we thought," Foster replied. "This isn't just a mindless eating machine. It has complex biological systems for breaking down different types of matter. It can process organic compounds, metals, even synthetic materials. Can it adapt to our weapons? That's the interesting part," Foster said. "It can adapt to energy weapons fairly quickly, but it seems to have trouble with projectile weapons. Our bullets and explosives work because they rely on kinetic energy, rather than directed energy. Colonel Stone leaned forward. So they've never faced species that use primitive weapons. Exactly. Most advanced civilizations move away from projectile weapons in favor of energy-based systems. The Devourers have adapted to counter lasers and particle beams, but they've never encountered gunpowder and steel. Taylor smiled. So, our primitive weapons are actually an advantage. More than that, Foster continued. I think we can exploit their biological systems. They're designed to process and adapt to anything they encounter. But what if we gave them something they can't process? She pulled up a chemical analysis on her screen. I've been working with the ship's chemists. We think we can create a compound that will disrupt their digestive systems. Essentially, we can poison them. Chemical warfare, Stone asked. Biowarfare, Foster corrected. We use their own adaptability against them. They'll try to process the compound, but instead of gaining energy, they'll be weakened. While the scientists worked on their bioweapon, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark was analyzing the tactical situation from the bridge. His findings were disturbing. Captain, I've identified 17 separate Devourer colonies in this system, he reported. They're not just randomly feeding. They're following a pattern. Taylor studied the tactical display. Explain. They start with the outer colonies and work their way inward. They don't just consume everything and move on. They leave breeding populations behind to continue the harvest. It's like they're farming these worlds. How long before they move to the next system? Clark ran the calculations. Based on their current consumption rate, they'll strip this system clean in about 6 months. Then they'll look for new feeding grounds. And there are plenty of peaceful species in the neighboring systems, Taylor said grimly. Species just like the Vilmarians. Yes, sir. If we don't stop them here, this infestation could spread across the entire sector. Taylor made his decision. Signal the fleet. We're moving to offensive operations. It's time to thin the herd. The human counterattack began at dawn, ship's time. 5 human vessels against hundreds of Devourer bioships. On paper, it looked like suicide. In reality, it was the first time the Devourers had faced opponents who understood the art of war. Commander Patricia Hill of the UES Boston opened fire first. Her ship's railguns sent projectiles at relativistic speeds, punching through Devourer armor like paper. The creatures had never faced kinetic weapons moving at such high velocities. The Devourers tried to swarm the human ships, using tactics that had worked against every other species they had encountered. But humans had been fighting swarm tactics since ancient times. They knew how to create kill zones and overlapping fields of fire. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Rodriguez led the fighter squadrons in a precision strike against the Devourer breeding ships. His pilots used tactics developed in Earth's deadliest air wars, diving through enemy formations and striking at critical targets before disappearing into the darkness of space. This is Razor Leader, Rodriguez reported over the radio. Primary. Targets destroyed. The big ones aren't reproducing anymore. The space battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the Devourer presence in the outer system had been reduced by half, but the humans paid a price. The U's Denver was heavily damaged, and they had lost 12 fighters. Status report, Taylor demanded. We hurt them, sir, reported Colonel Stone, but they're learning. The later attacks were much more coordinated than the early ones. They adapt fast, Clark added. Next time they'll be ready for our tactics. Then we'll have to be ready with new tactics, Taylor replied. How's the bioweapon coming? Dr. Foster says she needs another day, Stone answered. She has 6 hours, Taylor said firmly. Intelligence reports that the Devourers are massing for a counterattack. If we don't hit them with everything we have, they'll overwhelm us through sheer numbers. As the humans prepared for the next phase of battle, Commander Zethka watched from the bridge of his ship. The past week had changed his understanding of the universe completely. He had seen his people's savage rescuers fight with a combination of science and violence that was both terrifying and beautiful. They make it look easy, he said to his aide Kiranel. What do you mean, sir? Warzethka replied. These humans have turned violence into an art form. They study their enemies. They adapt their tactics. They sacrifice their own lives for strategic advantage. It's like watching master craftsmen at work. Do you think they can win, sir? Zethka looked out at the human fleet. 5 small ships, against an enemy that had destroyed 3 worlds. By any logical calculation, the humans should have been overwhelmed already. But logic didn't account for the human capacity for warfare. Kiranel, he said slowly, I think we may have accidentally called the most dangerous species in the galaxy to help us. And I think that might be exactly what we needed. In the laboratory, Dr. Foster was putting the finishing touches on humanity's latest weapon. It wasn't elegant like a laser or precise like a missile. It was a simple biological compound that would disrupt the Devourer's ability to process organic matter. It was, in essence, alien poison, and it was exactly the kind of dirty, practical solution that peaceful species would never think to develop. As she loaded the final battle began when the Devourers made their biggest mistake. Instead of continuing their usual feeding pattern, they gathered their entire force to attack the human fleet directly. For the first time in their species' history, they chose to fight rather than simply consume. It was exactly what Captain Ben Taylor had been hoping for. All ships, battle stations, Taylor ordered. This is what we came here for. The Devourer fleet was massive. Hundreds of bioships, ranging from small scouts to massive hive mothers, the size of asteroids. They moved through space like a living wave of destruction, confident that their numbers would overwhelm any resistance. They had never fought humans before. Admiral Jake Morrison arrived with reinforcements just as the enemy fleet entered weapons range. The EU's vengeance dropped out of faster-than-light travel, followed by 6 more human warships. The rescue mission had become a full military operation. Captain Taylor, Morrison's voice crackled over the radio. Good to see you're still in one piece. What's the tactical situation? The Devourers have committed their entire force to this attack, Taylor replied. If we can break them here, the threat to this system ends. If we lose, there won't be anything left to save. Understood. Captain Helen Brooks will coordinate the naval engagement. Colonel Stone, are your Marines ready for the ground assault? On the surface of Velara Prime, Colonel Rita Stone was already leading her forces toward the primary Devourer hive. The bioweapon had worked better than expected. Devourer colonies across the planet were dying as the poison spread through their biological networks. But the main hive was still active, still dangerous, and still holding millions of Valerian civilians as living food stores. Marines, this is it, Stone announced over the radio. Everything we've trained for comes down to the next few hours. Remember, those civilians are counting on us. Failure is not an option. The assault on the hive was brutal and direct, human. Marines used explosives to blast through the organic walls, then fought their way deeper using tactics that hadn't changed much since the first humans learned to hunt in packs. They moved in coordinated teams, covering each other's advances and eliminating threats with ruthless efficiency. Staff Sergeant Tony Martinez led the advance team into the hive's core. What they found there would give him nightmares for years. Thousands of Valerian civilians suspended in organic cocoons, being slowly digested alive. The Devourers hadn't just been feeding on the planet's resources. They had been farming the people. Command, this is Martinez, he reported, trying to keep the emotion out of his voice. We've found the civilians. Most are still alive, but they're in bad shape. We need medical teams down here immediately. Copy that, Sergeant. Medical teams are en route. What's the status of the hive? Martinez looked around at the pulsing walls and the massive central brain that controlled the entire colony. Give me 5 minutes with some explosives, sir. This whole place is coming down. While the Marines fought on the ground, the space battle raged above. Wing Commander Nick Peterson led his fighter squadrons against the Devourer bioships, using tactics developed in Earth's most desperate air wars. His pilots flew like demons, diving through enemy formations and striking at weak points with surgical precision. "Razor Squadron, form up on me," Peterson ordered. "We're going after the big one." The largest Devourer ship was a Hive Mother, living vessel that could birth new warriors in the middle of battle. It was protected by dozens of smaller ships, but Peterson had a plan. "Remember, these things have never faced fighter tactics before," he told his pilots. "They're used to big, slow targets. We're going to show them what happens when Earth predators hunt in packs." The fighter attack was a masterpiece of coordination and timing. Peterson's pilots struck from 6 different directions simultaneously, overwhelming the Devourer defenses through sheer speed and aggression. Within minutes, the Hive Mother was dead and sinking toward the planet's surface. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Helen Brooks coordinated the naval engagement with the cold precision of a chess master. She had studied every human naval battle and recorded history, and she applied those lessons to space warfare with devastating effect. "Target the command ships first," she ordered. "Cut off their coordination, and the rest will be easier to handle." The human fleet fought like wolves, using hit-and-run tactics to isolate and destroy individual Devourer ships. They had learned that the bioships were most vulnerable when separated from the collective, so they used their superior speed and maneuverability to divide the enemy force. The Devourers tried to adapt, but they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of organized violence. Every tactic, every weapon, every strategy had been tested in countless wars and refined through generations of conflict. The bioships were individually powerful, but they had no answer to human military doctrine. By the end of the day, the Devourer fleet was broken. Those ships that survived the battle fled toward the edge of the system, abandoning their colonies and their feeding grounds. For the first time in their species' history, the Devourers had been not just defeated, but utterly routed. 3 days later, Commander Zethka stood in the ruins of Valara Prime's capital city and watched human marines distribute medical supplies to the rescued civilians. The destruction was terrible, but his people were alive. Against all odds, they had survived. Captain Taylor found him there, staring at the wreckage of his world. "I'm sorry we couldn't save more," Taylor said. Zeth-Ka turned to face the human. "Captain, you saved millions of lives. You drove away an enemy we could never defeat. Why are you apologizing?" "Because this is what happens when you call us for help," Taylor replied honestly. "We solve problems with violence. We turn battlefields into graveyards. We're good at winning wars, but we're not good at avoiding them." The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. "Captain, may I ask you something?" "Of course. What do you want from us?" "You have traveled across the galaxy to help strangers. You have risked your lives for people you had never met. Surely you expect something in return." Taylor looked out at the human ships in orbit, already preparing to establish permanent bases in the system. "We want to make sure this never happens again. We want to protect the peaceful species from the predators." "And how do you plan to do that?" "By being the biggest predators in the galaxy," Taylor said simply. "By making sure that anyone who threatens innocent people has to go through us first." Zethka felt a chill run down his spine. "You're going to stay here? You're going to guard us?" "We're going to guard everyone," Taylor corrected. "The Devourers were just the beginning. The galaxy is full of threats that peaceful species can't handle. Pirates, conquerors, slavers, and worse. You called for help, and now you have it. Permanently." 2 weeks later, Dr. Lisa Carter sat in her communications center on Earth and monitored the signals coming from across the galaxy. Word of the human victory had spread faster than light, carried by traders and diplomats who had witnessed the aftermath of the battle. The galaxy now knew that humans existed. More importantly, they knew what humans were capable of. Carter's screens showed dozens of new messages arriving every hour. Some were from grateful species asking for protection. Others were from potential enemies demanding that humans stay out of their territory. A few were from civilizations offering trade agreements and alliances. Dr. Carter, her assistant, called out, "We're receiving a priority signal from the Valerian system. Put it through." Commander Zethka's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than when she had first seen him, but there was hope in his eyes. "Dr. Carter, I wanted to thank you personally for sending the message that brought your people to us." "You're welcome, Commander. How are the reconstruction efforts going?" "Better than expected. The human engineers are helping us rebuild our cities with new defensive systems. Captain Taylor says we need to be prepared for other threats." Carter nodded. "He's right. The Devourers weren't the only dangerous species out there." "I know," Zethka said. "That's why I'm calling. 3 more civilizations have contacted us, asking for help. Pirates have been attacking their trade routes, and their defense forces can't stop them. And Captain Taylor wants to know if Earth can send more ships." Carter smiled. The age of human expansion was beginning, but not in the way anyone had expected. Humans weren't spreading across the galaxy as conquerors. They were spreading as protectors, guardians, and peacekeepers. The most dangerous predators in the galaxy had decided to become the galaxy's police force. "Tell Captain Taylor that Admiral Morrison is already preparing a larger fleet," Carter said. "Earth takes its responsibilities seriously." After the transmission ended, Carter sat back in her chair and thought about what they had unleashed. The Valerians had called for help in their darkest hour, expecting to receive aid from fellow peaceful species. Instead, they had contacted a world full of apex predators who saw protecting the innocent as a moral duty. The galaxy was about to become a much safer place for peaceful species. It was also about to become a much more dangerous place for anyone who threatened them.